too much, okay? It was too much for me. So, DNF'd. Hello my friends, my name is Mina. Welcome to my channel, Mina Reads. In this video, I'm going to be telling you about all the books that I've DNF'd recently. I made a video like this last year and I really enjoyed it, and I really love the comment section on that video because I asked you guys to tell me if you've read any of these books, what were your thoughts on them, do you think I should give these books a second chance? And I really like the kind of collaborative effort that was going on in the comment section, so I want that for this video as well. So I'm going to tell you about these books, going to tell you my thoughts, maybe my grievances with the books, and then I want you to tell me, you know, do you think that I could push through? Do things get better as the story goes on? Like, let me know, okay? So yeah, let's get into it and let's indulge in my favorite hobby, which is complaining. Okay, so the first book that I have to share with you is For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. I got 50 pages into this, and I feel like for me, this was a book that just 50 pages into it, I did not care at all. I think that 50 pages into any book is more than enough time for it to grab you and to grip you and have you be interested in where the story's going, and I just feel like I kind of didn't feel that. For me, it just was like, it was not giving. This is a fantasy romance, I believe, and it's about this woman. She's like this second daughter in this highborn family, and she pretty much gets sacrificed to the wolf. The wolf is like this scary creature that lives in the magical forest. She gets sacrificed to him. She goes to the creepy woods, she meets him, come to find out he's really not that evil, and he also is not interested in her sacrifice. He actually wants her to go home and leave him alone, but she's just kind of stuck there staying with him in the woods, and that's pretty much where I left the story. I just was so checked out. I just did not care. But let me know if you read this and enjoyed it. Like, I haven't heard too much about it in the months since putting it down, but I feel like I could be swayed to pick it up again because it is kind of an interesting concept, but I just felt like those first 50 pages just did not grip me. But, I mean, 50 pages is a very small percentage of the story, so it's like maybe it could get better from there. I don't know. I don't know. You'll have to let me know. Tell me all the tea in the comments, okay? I'm even okay with some spoilers. Just like mark it if there's going to be spoilers so that you don't spoil people in the comment section, but I will be reading the spoilers because I love a good spoiler. Now here's a book you will not be able to convince me to pick back up, and in fact I don't know what made me think that I would want to read it either. So I read about, I want to say maybe even almost 80 pages of this book. Let me see, let's check, because I was on, yeah, I was on page 86. Chapter 8 was where I left off. I was reading this while I was on vacation and I just had to DNF it. It just, ugh. Okay, so first of all, let me give you a little bit of background. I read the first book in this series. This series is called like The Primas of Power. The first book is called You Had Met Olaf. I read that book. I did not like that book. I just really did not think that it was giving. I just didn't like that relationship that much. I didn't think that they had so much chemistry or whatever. Like, it just didn't work for me. It didn't sell me, and I read that in 2020, and I feel like the beautiful cover that this has really compelled me to pick it up, so I bought it on an impulse when it released in 2021. But yeah, like, this one also to me sucked. I just don't think that the characters had good chemistry, and this is like a childhood friends to lovers thing. They're kind of like estranged childhood friends, and they end up working together on this project. And so the guy, he like runs a gym. He's trying to open a new location. He needs her help. She's like a freelance marketing person, I think. And so in order for her to help him, she requests that he move in with her for the duration of the project. And then once he gets to New York to move into her apartment so they could work on this project together, she's like, well, actually, we're staying at my parents' house for the next month. And he's like, well, I don't really want to do that. And then she's like mad and angry and crying and like guilt tripping him about not wanting to stay in her parents' home. And then while he's like trying to sneak out, leaving her parents' house, they end up having sex. It just was like, what is going on? Like, the development just didn't make any sense. There's like some flashbacks to them being kids and being best friends, but it just was like the development and the way the story was progressing made no sense to me. And I just felt like the characters did not have chemistry. Their interactions were so weird, and they had sex. Like I said, I finished on chapter 8, and so in chapter 7 they were having sex, and it was like horrible sex. To me, it was like, it was so deeply off-putting. It was one of the worst sexies I've read all year, definitely. And it was just like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? It just, no. Everything about it was a no. So I DNF'd it because I did not want those bad vibes on my vacation. Not to say that the bad vibes were vanquished by DNFing this, because the next book that I picked up on my vacation also kind of sucked, but that's a story for another video. But yeah, nobody can convince me to pick that up. I don't even know why I convinced myself to pick that up, but it was a waste of money. The next book, this one I really do need you guys' feedback on, right? So this is A Light from Uncommon Stars, and this is about a young woman. She's like a young trans woman who has been, she's kind of a runaway. Is that the right term? I think so. Yeah, so she's a runaway and she's looking for like a place to stay, and so the only thing she really has is a few dollars to her name and her violin. She's like an up-and-coming violinist, and she meets this violin teacher who is like much acclaimed for teaching these like world-renowned violinists, but she kind of has like a dark secret. So this is a sort of magical realism vibe, and it deals with like some Faustian bargains and things of that nature, but it's also weird. And there's like this alien family that runs a donut shop, and there's like some sapphic relationship vibes, and then like found family vibes. It's a lot going on, a lot of promising, interesting, weird stuff that I tend to really enjoy in like speculative sci-fi fantasy stuff. So I feel like this is a book that I really could enjoy, and I got pretty deep into it. I don't have a bookmark in here anymore, but I do feel like I was maybe like up to chapter 10 or maybe 12 even. But the thing that stopped me when reading this is the violin aspect is like, it's very present, you know. And I do enjoy reading stories where characters have really strong passions or talents, and it's kind of about them indulging in that passion, hobby, or talent. But there's a lot of like, I want to say musical jargon that I really did not understand, and they're just talking about all of this like violin stuff that I just know nothing about. There's like this one chapter where it was like this very loving, intricately detailed chapter that was all about repairing this violin. I'm sorry to say, but I really don't care. I really don't care enough about classical music and about violin to be engaged by sequences like that. So I ended up DNFing the book like around that part where I was just like, I don't care about this stuff. But I feel like there's so much in the book that is interesting and that does kind of work for me. So I would love to know your thoughts on this book if you have read it, and if you think it's worth like finishing, because it definitely had a lot of merits to it. But I don't know, I just really was not vibing super heavily with like all of the violin details in this. So yeah. Alright, up next we have Games with the Orc by Catherine Moon, and this is just like an erotic romance. I kind of don't even want to call it a romance, it's just erotica. It's about this girl, and she has like a monster kink fantasy, so she hires a monster to help her play out her fantasy. I got about 63 pages into this one, and then I put it down because it is just erotica, and the good sis, she's getting her doonies bust down. So happy for her, you know what I'm saying? But at the time that I was reading this, I really did not care, and I just was not in the mood for smut, so I did end up DNFing it. Let me know if you read this. I haven't heard too many people talking about this one, even though Catherine Moon is like someone that a lot of people in my orbit of the bookish space really likes. So, but I haven't heard anybody talking about this book. So was this like a miss for everybody? Or did everybody like it and I just haven't heard about it? Like, let me know the tea. Then I also DNF'd another Catherine Moon book, which is called Faith in the Dead End Devils. And it worries me deeply that I DNF'd two Catherine Moon books back to back. I'm worried. Like, Catherine Moon was kind of my girl, like my go-to. I know if I pick her up, I'm gonna love the book. And so to have two DNFs back to back, I am scared. You know, I am a little bit worried about the state of our relationship. But let me tell you a little bit about Faith in the Dead End Devils. Pretty much, this is a part of her Sweet Omegaverse. If you are familiar with my deep love for this sweet Omegaverse, then you will know how much of a travesty this was for me personally. I was eagerly anticipating this book. I was counting down the days for its release. I absolutely love Baby and the Midnight Howlers. I love Lola and the Millionaires. I love Bad Alpha. I enjoy the sweet Omegaverse so much. So I thought that this was going to be a certified hit, and it absolutely was not for me. It did not work for me at all. The main premise of this is that we have this main character named Faith, and she is an Omega, and she has been caught up in this like Omega like sex trafficking ring. And at the beginning of the story, she's being trafficked somewhere, and this motorcycle club intercepts the vehicle that she's in, and so they end up taking her in to their motorcycle club, and it ends up with her like finding a pact with some of these guys in the motorcycle club. But the thing is, I want to say that I got maybe like 60% into the book, so I was pretty deep in, and it is a pretty long book, so 60% was like, could have been like 200 or more pages. I just feel like Faith was so dissociated and like so out of it. I don't feel the vibes. I don't think that the vibes here are good. I don't think the relationships are making sense, and also some of her boyfriends were so mean. Like, they were so annoying, and I hated them. So it just was like, it was an absolute miss for me, which we hate to see, because I love Catherine Moon, but maybe not as much as I previously thought. Okay, my camera died, so if the angle's different, that's why. But the next book that I'm going to tell you about is really unhinged on my part, and I am going to read it at some point. I am, okay? But it just, for whatever reason, I just can't make it happen. I was 50% of the way through this book, but let's say I was around like 150 pages into the book, I feel like, at least. And I DNF'd it because it was giving me so much anxiety. Listen, Brescian and Ildiko are some of my favorite characters in a fantasy romance ever, and I love them so deeply and so dearly. And the first book is like a arranged marriage fantasy romance thing, and so pretty much at the end of that book, some horrible stuff happens. This witch opens a portal, and like these monsters crawl out. So this book, Eidolon, the second book in that series, is about them like fighting these demon monsters that have come out of this magical portal, and all of this responsibility is falling on Brescian because he was the crown prince, to kind of protect his kingdom, protect the people, figure out solutions, right? And so I got like halfway through this book, and it was giving me so much stress and anxiety reading about two characters that I love so much, like in this really fraught situation. And I can't explain it. Like, I already have anxiety, and sometimes if I'm too connected, like I really care too much about the characters, like I will really be feeling that anxiety in my body, and I will felt like I was like having a panic attack reading a particular scene in this book because of how anxious I was for my characters. And it's crazy because like this is a fantasy romance, like more likely than not everything is going to be okay, and they're going to save the day, and they're going to be in love and live happily ever after. But for whatever reason, like I just cannot make it through because I'm so scared. Yes, it's very unhinged on my part, but I just can't read it. I just can't. I just love the characters too much, and like seeing them have to deal with a difficult situation just is upsetting me. Like, I just can't explain it, but that's where I'm at. So then we've got this book. We've got The Upgrade by Blake Crouch, and I really did not make it that far into this one. I think, oh my god, I just saw the exact page that I got to where I DNF'd it, and now I lost the page. It was on page 30, and I don't know if you guys see it, but it's like this DNA sequence right here. And I got to that point and I was like, oh my god, I really don't give a fuck about this. So listen, it's only 30 pages into the book. There's so much page space left for good, interesting, cool developments to happen. But this was like really heavy on this scientific elements of whatever the hell's going on in this world, and I didn't care. Upgrade is about pretty much this like advanced future where genome sequencing or like gene hacking is a thing, and our main character is like an FBI agent that works in a unit that tries to apprehend people who are into like gene hacking, pretty much. So he goes into this place and he is exposed to this like gas that hacks his genome, and it changes some stuff about his DNA, and it's creating like this super soldier type thing in his body. Actually, sad to say, but I don't care. I am definitely not a woman in STEM. Like, it just has never been me. And I have read another book by Blake Crouch in the past. I read Dark Matter, and I really like Dark Matter. And Dark Matter has like some scientific-y stuff in that as well, because the guy is like a physicist. I want to say he might even be like an astrophysicist or something. So there's definitely was some scientific talk in that, but somehow it worked more for me in that than it did in this. And I don't know if I necessarily care to continue this, but I would be interested to know what your thoughts were if you did make it further than 30 pages. So this is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and my bookmark is still in here. I got to page 185 in this book, and then I DNF'd it. Can you believe it? So let me tell you about how crazy this DNF was, because I was reading it and I was really loving the book at first, and I want to say that this has one of the strongest, most evocative opening chapters of any book I've read maybe ever. Like, it was so good. I loved it. It was so lyrical and poetic and interesting. It's about this woman named Beatrice, and she marries this guy named Rodolfo, and it's about her moving into like his family home and meeting like his creepy sister, and you know, it's just like a typical like gothic horror novel, like haunted house situation. And the other point of view that we get in this story is from this priest named Andres, and Andres and Beatrice kind of have a little romantic spark between them. It's just very like angsty, and like the yearning, the pining, and all that is so good, and I just was really loving the writing, and I think the writing was incredibly good, right? And I thought that the dynamic between Andres and Beatrice was really interesting, and it was like really spooky and everything. But I set myself up for failure with this one because I was also reading another gothic novel at the same time, and so I think they ended up just being so similar in terms of like the vibe and the general atmosphere that I ended up losing interest with this one, because I was reading the other one and I finished the other one and I was like, you know what, I don't think I'm in the mood to read gothic anything anymore. So I ended up putting this one down, but I will be picking it back up again when spooky season rolls around, because it was a good read and it was well written and everything like that, but I just kind of felt myself losing interest. So yeah, I definitely would say that I'm going to pick this one up again, and I just need to remind myself that variety is the spice of life, so I can't read too much of the same thing like back to back. So that's, you know, an important lesson for me to learn. Okay, and the last book I'm going to tell you about is a book that I am a little bit sad or scared to show this, because I love this author, and this author follows me on some of my platforms, so hopefully they don't see this. But Vicious Devotion by Aveda Weiss. I had to DNF this, and I DNF'd this pretty deep into the book. I was like 355 pages into the book, okay? And this is a like monster romance, and it's an enemies to lovers, like polyamorous monster romance, and it's about these people and they're like fighting on opposite sides of this like war thing. There's a rebellion happening. It's a lot going on. It's very interesting plot wise, actually, and the enemies to lovers is really like enemies to lovers, like trying to kill each other vibes, knife to the throat, all of that, and it's very interesting. So then they're enemies, they're on opposite sides of this war, and this one character named Fear is kind of captured as a prisoner of war, and Fear has to be married into these people's pack so that, I don't know, so that the powers that be will think that she's like loyal to the cause again, pretty much. So I was reading this, it's a lot of interesting stuff going on plot wise. It's also really pornographic, and some of the stuff that they're into I'm not into, but I was like, sure, you know, reading it, it's whatever, it's cool. So I as you saw, I got pretty deep into it. I was 355 pages into it, and then Aveda posted art of the characters at their wedding, because like I said, there's like an arranged marriage situation, and Aveda posted this art of the characters at their wedding, and the characters are all animals, and I knew that, but I didn't know that. I thought it was like a almost like a werewolf situation. I thought it was a like maybe they have some animalistic features, like, oh, they've got like a tail, or they've got like the ears or something like that, you know. I didn't think that they were like really like full-blown animals, but they are. And like one of them is a bunny, and it was just like, it was just so Zootopia. It was just so Zootopia. It was so Officer Hops. And I was just like, oh my god, like what am I reading? Where am I? I really don't think that I'm the target audience for the book. And I think that if you are somebody who identifies as a furry, or you have a fursona, you're gonna fucking love this book. Like, you're gonna eat it up. I guarantee it, okay? But me personally, I'm not on that particular wave. And so once I realized the truth of what the characters like look like, I was like, okay, it's monster is very different than animal in my mind. Monster is very different than animal, and it's too much, okay? It was too much for me. So DNF'd. Sorry. Veda Weiss is a very talented writer, and I would recommend reading her other works. But this one, I don't know. So yeah, babes, these are the books that I've DNF'd recently. How do you feel about DNFing? Are you a liberal DNFer, or do you have to finish every single book that you start reading? I'd love to know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys. Mwah.